this is your Swapnil Bhartiya, and we are here at Open Infrastructure Summit in Denver, Colorado. And today we have once again Terri Schlosser, and you are head of product marketing at SUSE. We are here at this summit. So first of all, it's the first day, so it's more like fresh coffee. You just took a sip. It's very fresh. So what has been your experience so far?
Interestingly enough, there have been a lot of new people here at the summit. I've had several conversations with people doing new and interesting things. So I was talking to one lady who was telling me about her doing consulting for the healthcare industry and learning about IoT and what we could do to help with running applications that leverage IoT data and helping to secure those applications so that they can meet all of the HIPAA requirements. I think that's the first time I've talked to somebody in that kind of a job at an OpenStack, now Open Infrastructure Summit. I talked to another gentleman today who was looking for SUSE OpenStack cloud support on power systems of all things. So a good set of new people that are here. I talked to another lady who is working on GPUs. So really interesting set of people that are here. A lot of new people coming to learn more about OpenStack and how they can leverage OpenStack with what they're doing to drive improvements for their companies.
That must have been an interesting conversation because IoT is a topic which is very close to your heart as well. So did you trigger the conversation?
No.
You're walking around asking people, hey, so do you do IoT? What can IoT do? Oh, I'm in healthcare, I do IoT. So.
No. I asked her what she was interested in and she told me.
So when you talk about healthcare and IoT, I mean, it makes perfect sense, you have to collect a lot of, data about how your heart is functioning, your BP, or a lot of things are there, and then, but then you're also generating this data which has to comply with a lot of regulations. Then you send across. So when you talk to her, how are they using IoT?
Well, she's a consultant who actually works with a bunch of different healthcare systems, and I was talking to her about the different use cases. And for her, what was interesting and really her challenge are the fact that in healthcare, you have all different kinds of IoT devices, and they're collecting all different kinds of data. So you have wearables. Right now, you can take your sugar levels, right, using your phone. Right, so there are all these different ways. And then you have things like the digital images from X-rays and MRI scans, and you put that all together, and they're trying to collect file, block, and object storage, right? Because they have all these different kinds of sensors collecting all of these different kinds of data. And so I was talking to her about our storage solution. It is a unified storage solution, lets them leverage commodity hardware, which for her was really important because there are only so many types of hardware that are certified as HIPAA compliant.
Right.
So it lets her choose the hardware that they know to be HIPAA compliant and then leverage it for a storage solution that can gather and store and manage all of those different types of data. So it's a very interesting conversation.
Right. And you mentioned another conversation with another gentleman. What was that about?
Well, I talked to one gentleman who's looking at using SUSE OpenStack Cloud on power servers, which was very interesting because we haven't had very many conversations about. I think we've talked to two other customers looking to run OpenStack on power. And actually, that's not something that SUSE currently does. We support running SUSE OpenStack Cloud on the Z, on the mainframe.
Yeah, that's what...
And so we were having an interesting discussion with him about what his use case was, why he was looking for it on power, what they were using their power systems for. And it was interesting because his client is actually a university, and he's like, I actually don't know what workloads. They're doing research and things like that, but he didn't know a lot about the workloads that they were using, which was interesting.
Now let's go back to the previous conversation you had around IoT and healthcare. So what are the biggest challenges that they face when it comes to not only collecting the data, storing it, processing it, sending it, and because there are so many, like you have edge devices, and so what are the one big main challenge that they face dealing with the data?
So dealing with the data, I think one of the biggest challenges that they have is just the amount of data that's coming in. And for a lot of the customers that are out there, it's a lot more than they expected. You know, whether it's a police department who is now wearing body cams and they're getting data every day from those police officers where they had none of that before. I mean, just think about going from 0 to having 100 policemen wearing cameras 24 hours a day and having to store all that data. So it's the amount of data coming in and having to manage that data. Really understanding how do I put it into a system where I can easily access that data when I need to. If something happens, can I get to that data quickly? Understanding how to tier my data, archive data when I need to, putting it in the right place. So really about managing that data and being able to expand my storage management capacity when I need to without disruption. So those are, I mean, when you talk about the amount of data that's coming in, I heard one estimate that by 2025, I think 90 zettabytes of data just from IoT devices. I mean, huge amounts of data coming. And people really have to be ready, right, with an infrastructure, a storage management infrastructure for that data growth.
Right. There are a couple of things that I think of, and I may be wrong, but number one is when you look at data, that data has a lot of value in it, right? So a second is that redundancy, if they lose the data. So from your perspective, SUSE's perspective, are you using any kind of machine learning? I mean, I know SUSE's product portfolio, but how do you help them extract that key value they want? Because data itself has no value.
You're right. So there are a couple things. We don't have any applications to look at the data and then do anything with the data. But I agree with you, right? Data is just data until you analyze the data and you turn it into information, right? And then once you act on that information, it becomes intelligence. So we do some things internally with SUSE Enterprise Storage. We look at where data is running and we will intelligently move things around to optimize it, right? So if you have 3 servers and you have rules set up that say, you know, after 30 days, I want to archive this data off, then I can do that and open up space and I can consolidate. So we have intelligence built in from that perspective. The data itself, right, we have customers using machine learning, artificial intelligence, big data analytics. They're doing all kinds of things, high performance computing, and they leverage our platform to do that, SUSE Linux Enterprise Server to do that.
So machine learning is a workload for you. It's not.
Yes, it's not. It's a workload for us. It's not something that we do ourselves.
So you offer a platform which most of those workloads run. Second part was redundancy. So when it comes to SUSE storage platform.
Yes, actually, we're doing a lot with redundancy. We have some good announcements coming up, which we'll be talking with you soon. We'll be announcing our next release of SUSE Enterprise Storage 6, which has some new features specifically related to redundancy in them. So that is coming soon. I'm just going to tell you that's coming in the next couple of months. You'll see some announcements about that.
So SUSE is already working on that part of the equation. One more thing when we were talking before we started recording was that you were saying that complexity itself. You did mention earlier, but how do you help them with the complexity that comes with the? I mean, imagine we have not even scratched the surface of IoT devices.
No, not even close.
So what kind of complexity you have seen, and how are you trying to kind of solve them?
Well, I think for IT departments, they start with a project, right? We're going to try one thing with these sensors, and we have talked with customers using sensors to track the temperature outside where they're growing plants and keeping plants ready for customers, and they're tracking the temperature and how much water is in the air and when they need to water and when the sun is out, and all that data is coming in, which is important for them to manage. But the other thing that they have to think about managing are all of those IoT devices. So you start thinking about, as a company, whether you're in the automobile industry and you now have all these sensors in the car and autonomous driving and all the data that you're collecting, but also managing those sensors. When there's an update to the software, I have to be able to push it out to all of those devices. I need to be able to connect to all of those devices. I have to manage those devices. So it's the added complexity that comes with IoT. And complexity in and of itself is not necessarily bad, as long as you can manage the complexity.
Right.
And one of the things that we're doing at SUSE is making sure that our platform, at the most basic level, the operating system, is capable of running in IoT devices built on ARM, in your data center, on Power, on Z, on x86, or in the cloud, wherever those machines are. And so you have the capability to manage using a single tool across all of those devices, no matter where they are.
What kind of exciting use cases you have seen of IoT that excite you as well?
Oh, well, there are so many, actually.
We have whole day.
Well, yeah, we have all day. Well, I have mine on. I have my Fitbit on, right?
Yeah.
I am constantly looking at the data. How did I sleep last night? It's not just about how many steps, but how did I sleep and how do I feel? I don't remember where I was, but I saw this great example of IoT and tracking, right? I know where the tuna fish was caught. I know where it was processed. I know, you can start to track where your food is coming from. And to me, I find that very, very interesting, because I think that in our society, we don't necessarily know where everything is coming from.
Right.
And I think that's very interesting to be able to look back and really understand, okay, the tuna fish that I'm eating came from here, and it was caught on this day and processed in this way, and this is how it came to me. I think that that's a very interesting one. I also think farming automation is very interesting. My husband grew up in Wisconsin, so used to work at a John Deere dealership. And the automation that's coming with farming these days is unbelievable. Using drones to go out and evaluate how things are doing, using automation to automatically water based on, again, on the humidity, right? Do the plants even need the moisture level in the soil, as opposed to just watering on a specific day or based on, a farmer's experience using sensors out in the fields to really automate the whole process. I think is very, very interesting as well. I think the other one that a lot of people can relate to is in the airline industry, right? I think we all just saw, unfortunately, not such a great example, right, with the airplanes, right, having a sensor that was bad and having to overwrite, that sensor's capabilities. And I was reading an example of Boeing, right, had one of their planes that used to have 10,000 or 6,000 sensors on the whole plane. And now they have 10,000 sensors in one wing. I mean, the amount of data that they're getting now in airplanes compared to just, 5 years ago is 5-10 times as much as they were getting before. So I think that's very interesting. The other one that I think is really interesting is all the medical things that are going. I mean, they're putting devices in people, inside their bodies, and then tracking and knowing exactly what's going on 24 hours a day. And the doctors are getting the information. You don't even have to go into the doctor anymore.
The rate at which new technologies are coming up is hard to.
Is incredible.
With AR, VR, and IoT, when you put together all of that machine learning, it's totally different world we would be living in. I know. So.
And the thing that's so interesting is that, with machine learning and even with AI, they're only as good as the data that they can consume.
If they don't have data,
you have to have the sensors. Exactly. The more sensors, right? That's going to drive even more with AI and ML.
It's just like our brain, if you don't have eyes, or you don't have sensors, is useless. So it's same. And another beauty is that most of this work is happening in open source.
Yes. I wrote a blog last year about a lot of the open source projects that are going on around these new technologies, AR, VR, machine learning, and it really is incredible. There are so many open source projects, and one of the keynotes today was making a comment that they weren't really sure. They had the round visual up around CI/CD and containers, and they kind of commented that we don't know if open source will win. And I personally was thinking, of course open source is going to win. If you really went out there and looked at the machine learning, AR, VR, containers, I mean, Kubernetes has already won containers.
Right. Yeah.
I really disagree with that. I do think open source is going to be the winner in all of those areas, in all the new technology areas.
Why do you think so?
Because the innovation, the speed at which innovation happens in an open source community will always outpace anything that any proprietary vendor can do. You have people that are interested in it, that will do it in their free time and dedicate their their mind share to that, and you just can't outpace the level of innovation that happens in open source communities. I don't think any privately funded proprietary or even publicly funded, any proprietary software can out innovate an open source community. They just can't.
Right. And one of the reasons I see is that when you're a proprietary company, you have 10 developers working on that.
Versus the 100,000 you
which is fine, and they have their own your culture, they have your mindset. And with open source, what happens is that you get people from SUSE, Red Hat, Microsoft, Google, VMware, Pivotal, Cloud, Verizon, AT&T, whoever you name.
Yeah.
So suddenly, if every company is dedicated only 2 people or 3 people, suddenly you have a team of 500 people. Which come from different backgrounds, solving different problems, looking at this code based from a different angle. So it's obviously,
there just isn't any comparison.
Exactly, and then since it's cutting your R&D that you have to put in there, you can use that R&D to actually add value to that open source product. So now everybody is creating open source, and everybody is adding value to it instead of one company creating one product. So that's a risk,
And it's like what Jonathan Bryce said this morning, right? It's not the technology that's going to differentiate you, right?
So yeah, I mean, you are absolutely right. That there is no doubt. I think the people who doubt, I mean, I'm not calling anybody out, I think are the ones who don't understand fully open source, or they have not invested in open source enough to actually understand how it works. Because once you understand it works, I mean, it's kind of magic,
Well, and if you look back, right, the past 20 years, right, there were some large companies who were not in favor of open source.
Right.
But they've changed their
They have changed their, and they have totally, I mean, if you look, okay, let's just become a bit philosophical. If you look at human civilization, our evolution is because of from China, India, Egypt, all the innovations coming out. If these were proprietary, if China kept the printing proprietary,
exactly.
So we share ideas, and that is the open source model. Everybody we takes and then built on top of it, and then they can take back. That's how it happens. So I think open source is the natural order, of this universe.
I agree with you.
Yeah, everybody who has seen Endgame would agree.
That's right.
So anyway, thank you so much for talking to me again, and hopefully we'll see you again in a few weeks.
It might be longer than that.
Yeah, we should just make a regular, show, weekly or monthly show.
We should have a monthly show, the Swapnil and Terri.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Swapnil.